shift gears and talk about the future of work. So Denise Bruder, you've been doing all these sessions with us, with Simon Vine. We assembled another great panel. So we need to all be mindful of these zeitgeist trends on the future of work. Off to you.
It's very lonely up here. I'd love to have some fellow panelists if anyone wants to opt in. And while everyone's coming up, we're going to give a very shameless shout out to a 5K we're running tomorrow morning. My very early market research tells me there's an epidemic of terrible bad knees in the community. I'm not sure if that's true or not, but I'd love to see you guys tomorrow at 7 a.m. outside the hotel for a really brief 5K. Mark's put up a nice prize for it, Mark, haven't you? The best PR? Oh, well, there you go.
I like to talk a lot, but I don't need both of them.
It's a nice moderate pace. We'll do a fun run walk. If there's anyone that has a nice strong pace, we can split into 2 groups so we can accommodate everyone. So 7 a.m. tomorrow, we'll see you there. Simon, would you like to kick off the panel?
Absolutely. Thank you very much. I'm very honored, and I'm sure all of us are very honored to be here today and to be in front of you. And I want to, of course, express my gratitude to Mark, who created this event and who actually supported this initiative of the future of work. My name is Simon Vine. I believe that the future of work is one of the most crucial issues which we face today. Maybe it's not at the level of climate change, but it's at the level of a social climate change. It is extremely important. We saw last year what was happening when people are not satisfied for reasons and without reasons, and we have to do something, meaning we, us. I'm very pleased that we have such a phenomenal panel, and thank you, Denise, for putting us all together, and hopefully we will raise awareness of this issue. So one of the things which I will try to do is to kind of give a shot of adrenaline. I will test you on statistics. I will test you on some other kind of observations in your life in the next 3 minutes for you to wake up after long sessions and to kind of honor us with your attention after you listen to such phenomenal speakers. So the first thing which I want to tell you is that I actually lived through the future of work facing issues, facing tremendous volatility, which exceeded 208 volatility. And I managed a very large team, managed a big bank. And I knew that I had to learn about motivation, about leadership. And I understood a lot of things and had a chance to experiment. And that's why I think that future of work is something worth your attention. And it's a discipline which will help all of us to overcome many issues which we will have in front of you. That's number one. Number two, in terms of the major skill issues, which I think are very important, I would like to draw your attention to 2 observations, which I sincerely believe are very critical for the discussion of the skills. The first one is the boredom as one of the biggest obstacles that we will face. Boredom as a huge motivator, and I will explain why I think it's very important. And the second thing is self-motivation as the key to everything, to all the skills. Boredom is important, and you can think about it very quickly. When you decide to do a nature walk, you get tired, you get mosquito bites, you get sweaty, and then suddenly you take a shower and feel good. Well, you could see this nature on TV, but somehow you need to be entertained. And that brings us to the point of the ancient Romans, the bread and circus proverb. We are moving in the society where artificial intelligence and robots will be substituting a huge number of workforce. So people will be playing nonstop. They will have circus and they have food, but the question is what it means. And I want to summon your statistical knowledge and ask you what is our experience in statistical terms. It is basically sampling. How many samples of different things we have in our minds. So imagine all these crowds of people who will be doing only watching Netflix and playing games. They will not have samples. they will not have this experience. The second thing is that it is not only experience, it's the mean and median of every sample. Mean is something which all people will be the same watching TV. They will completely become a similar crowd, very easily algorithmically calculatable. And all of us who live through experience, understand shades of gray, challenges, have very broad mean, a very broad dispersion. So we understand different versions of everything that's happening. People who watch TV will not have it. And that means that a huge portion of our emotions and actions will not be explicable. There will be some flares, which some of us will think that's unbelievable. And in statistical terms, that's what was going to happen. And we are here to a large extent to figure out how to make people productive and give them the skills not to watch TVs, not to be subject to this huge entertainment drive which we have now all over the world. The thing which is very, very important for us to actually facilitate is self-motivation. When you study motivation, you suddenly realize that motivation is a very democratic idea. You need to bring people to some level. But when you change everything in your organizations, in the society, like Ohio does, you still have a problem that people need to use this opportunity. And for instance, I had to invent lots of things. My institution moved from very low engagement level as a measure of employee satisfaction to very high engagement level. People were very happy. But what I discovered, you can create an environment, but you cannot create the self-motivation. And I think that when we're talking about the skills which our children will need and the skills which the society will need, all of them are based on the belief that people will be self-motivated to actually have the skills, to take advantage of the opportunities of the United States. What we saw last year was very dramatic. It leads us to the understanding how important is the future of work. And I believe that I remain very optimistic because I think it is in American nature to be self-motivated. And I believe that our power, to a large extent, lays in this tremendous image which each American has in front of him, is the image of Statue of Liberty, which is the ultimate image of self-motivation. Thank you.
Just imagine being in a bus all around the country with Simon Vine. He could rip, you can name a subject, he can fly.
Well, this is true. And you've also completely reinforced my parenting style. I endeavor to keep my kids appropriately bored, still self-motivated to spark curiosity and entertain themselves. So major thank you. So my name is Denise Bruder. I'm a workplace futurist, a hybrid work advocate, and the founder at SWAY Workplace. Our area of focus is to work with teams transitioning to hybrid work by training them on the skills, the mindset, and techniques that drive performance and reduce the risk for companies. The future of work is a very, very hot topic. You've probably read about it or heard about it in many domains. To paint a frame of reference for what it is, if the future of work was a highway, there are 3 lanes. The first lane is the workplace revolution, which is the ongoing shift from being in the office to hybrid ways of working. The second lane is the employment revolution, which is the ongoing shift from being employed to working in gig, which is collectively known as the open talent economy. And the third lane is the skills revolution, which is what we're here to talk about today, and generally speaks to the emergence of the growing disconnect between the skills that the market needs to thrive and the skills that the market is able to provide. So we have here today a star-studded panel that's going to help us look through the challenges in the skills revolution to find the opportunities for how do we place capital, make decisions, and make changes in our system today to drive the skills that we need for the future. So what I'm going to do is we're going to start by having a very quick introduction so you can understand who everybody up here is, their background, and how they tie to the subject matter. Gary, you want to kick off? And this is going to be a game of musical mic, not musical chairs.
Sure. All right, technology. Good morning. I just want to say for all of you that I've met on Zoom before, you're all much better looking and much taller than Mr. Zoom would ever have given me to believe. So it's great to meet you all in person. I think I'm the only one who brought a prop. So just very quickly, I'm the author of a new book called The Next Rules of Work. I'm the chair for the future of work with Singularity University. I'm a partner in a group called Charette, which does initiatives focused on future of work, future of learning, and the future of the organization. We have an initiative called Global Skills Day. We just did a big event 2 months ago, and we have an initiative called the Skills Genome Project. So we knitting together skills-centric initiatives from around the world. And basically, our premise is that the future of work, the topic is, obviously on the lips of many. It's gone from theory to practice in a pretty short period of time, but it's really about the present. We all want to make sure that we're trying to build the kind of system that is as inclusive as possible for as many humans as possible. And so that's my focus, and I hope that's where a lot of the discussion today ends up going.
I'm Jackie Walker. I'm the Executive Director for Skills USA Ohio. We are a large career and technical student organization focused on providing opportunities in practical mentorship, leadership development, and competitions for students in over 130 different career fields. So all of our students are trained in career and technical education. They're ready-made for you, and our job is to provide experiences for them to learn in the real life environment. So all of our competitions are based real world, led by business and industry, bringing them together as a showcase for everyone to see what Ohio brings forward in the career and technical education environment.
Hi, I'm Gary Brode from Deep Knowledge Investing. After a 3-decade career in the hedge fund business, I started Deep Knowledge Investing as a subscription research firm. We help family offices and portfolio managers, hedge fund managers, get better equity returns in that portion of their portfolios. We've done extensive writing and research in the online education space, and all of the people today who have talked about these fantastic opportunities, the ways that we're going to help young people start new careers without taking on huge amounts of debt. These are all fantastic ideas. They're worth our time, attention, investment. It is my job and our job at Deep Knowledge Investing to help you make money from those trends, to help you earn a return from those trends, because if we're going to support them and these are good things, you all have portfolios to run, and that's where we get involved. Thanks.
My name is John Havens. I'm a principal in a single family office here in town. We have investments kind of across industries, everything from auto finance to manufacturing, banking, insurance. But my kind of sweet spot is the home services sector, particularly plumbing, drain cleaning, and HVAC, which we think is highly overrated or overlooked as, young people's ability to make a great living and build something for themselves, and even have entrepreneurial successes starting their own companies. So that's where I'm coming from.
Good morning. I'm Christy Klaus. I'm the Senior Managing Director for Talent at Jobs Ohio. So for those who were here this morning and heard the Lieutenant Governor and the Governor describe what Jobs Ohio is, we're the private corporation to do economic development in 9+1 sector for the state of Ohio, more on the tradable side of the economy. So my background in economic development and workforce development tie together in this topic, but at the heart of it, I will just let you know I'm an economic development junkie. I love doing deals, working with companies, and that is really what inspires me every day. But in my talent role, what I do and my team does is we help bring focus and discipline for Jobs Ohio and our companies on their specific talent strategies, challenges, and therefore solutions, trying to drive all of us to bridge this skill gap and try to address the future of work.
Hello, my name is Christy Vene. I am a K-12 educator, and I work for Dublin City Schools, which is a suburban district. It's public here in near Central Ohio, about 20 minutes from here. And my role is unique in a school district. I develop programs and partnerships with local businesses to help provide experiential and career education for young people, a lot with skill development, and it's a K-12 role, which is interesting. A lot of people say, what do you do with elementary kids? And that's where it starts. I've been in education for roughly 20 years, and I was a teacher, I was a principal, and now in a district level role, help to develop what the workforce needs out of our young people. So a lot of conversations with industry and higher ed.
I'm Jerry Farley. I'm with Oakmont Education. We work with Opportunity Youth. And if you're not sure about Opportunity Youth, those are young people ages 16 to 24 who are disconnected from work and from their jobs. And I just want to share real quick that last year, out of the 3,000 youth that we worked with, over 1,700 were involved in career tech. And from that, those 1,700 youth earned 2,227 industry recognized credentials, leading to good and promising jobs with over 1,300 of those youth. I want to explain to you today during our panel how we're able to get such youth who are really entry-level workers engaged, feeling purposeful, involved with businesses, and ultimately placed.
So when you hear this background of the panel that we have up here, when you think of skills, you think of a very vanilla, ordinary subject that has some challenges, but how extraordinary is it that everyone here is marching on the same path to clear that disconnect from such very different angles and sitting on the very different parts of the arc of change. So what we're going to do for the rest of the session is I have some pointed questions to bring out the best of the work that these folks are doing. I'm going to ask the question. So please, and the one thing I know about 361 is that nobody here is shy. So please make sure if you have a question to raise your hand or to jump in. There's nothing worse than being talked at. We'd love to talk with you. So please make sure you have your questions ready to go. So for the gentleman at the end, Gary, we're going to start with you. A major congratulations, Gary, on the release of your book. I'm a huge fan of yours, been following you for a long time. But tell me this, Gary, your book definitely has a larger holistic perspective on where we're going in the future of work, specifically as it relates to the reimagination of learning. So based on the reaction to your book so far and your own feelings about it, what is the most important thing that this audience needs to know about your book? In 2 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to do the commercial. I think I'm going to try to dodge it as much as I can and just say, let me just set the table just generally. So I've talked for quite some time about this idea that there are sort of old rules of work that we've inherited from the industrial era, newer rules that the tech companies are kind of leading us into, and more of this distributed work thing that not many of us probably did all that much before the pandemic. And then what I talk about the next rules in terms of what we're reshaping right now. And I've called the global pandemic the Great Reset. I've written a series of articles just talking about that. I believe it's not just a pause, but it actually is a chance to build better. That is, we have the opportunity to treat it as a new start date. And especially when it comes to education and learning and the way that we work, where we work, how we work, and why we work. That we've got a new opportunity to create a completely different mindset, skill set, and tool set. And so that's the sort of three legs of the stool. We talk about skills up here, and that is absolutely critical, but it's also important that we're preparing our youth, our adults, our workers, our managers, those who lead in organizations with the mindset of a much more inclusive future of work. And then I think we talked a lot about the tool set, the technologies and techniques to enable them.
Gary, one more follow-on question for you. In your book, you talk about future 1, 2, and 3, which I thought was a fascinating way to prescribe the future. Future 1 is lots of robots, lots of unemployment. Future 2 is lots of employment assisted by robots. And future 3 is lots of work and lots of under-end unemployment. So if you had a crystal ball, which way are we pointing?
All right, so the framing, I'm fond of saying in January 2020, the future of work was theory, and by March it was practice, right? So we all suddenly sheltered in place, or learned from remote and learned the Zoom thing. But up until that point, a lot of the discussion had been sort of the Venn diagram of here's all of the messy, expensive humans, here's all the work opportunity. The work opportunity was going to get shrunk by robots and software, and then the Venn diagram overlap was going to get worse and worse. But what I was trying to push for pre-pandemic was really a different mindset, which is it's really the pace and the scale of change. It's that we actually get workforce mismatches not as a bug of the system, it's a design of the system. In the United States, we don't have an employment system, we have an unemployment system where things only kick in when something bad happens to you, like you lose a job. And instead, if we have a different mindset, what we'll think about is, well, let's try to keep those humans continually moving forward. That's what the whole skills framing is about, is to help humans to continually be able to deliver the value that's needed in any given work market, but also then to rethink how the work market works. And the rhetoric pre-pandemic was robots were going to do that. But I show a bunch of, I'm very fond of the Venn diagrams in the book. And what I tried to show is, no, actually it's the workforce mismatches. So right now we have 10.9 million job openings and we have 5.7 million people unemployed. That shouldn't happen. But it happened because of the way that we've designed our systems. And that's just straight flat employment numbers. It doesn't mean whether they're good jobs. It doesn't mean whether people are happy and productive in their work. It doesn't mean whether they're engaged in their work. So I want to make sure we're really having that mindset as we think about the potential futures. We need to close that gap. We need to figure out ways that we're continually helping humans to be able to deliver the value that is needed today and tomorrow. But the work system has to change. We have to change how we hire. We have to change how we think about developing people. We have to do that as what I call as involving as possible. And we need to make sure that we do that systemically and we do that in a rinse and repeat model going forward, or else we're going to run into this again, the next big reset that we run into.
That leads very nicely into Jackie. And, it makes me think, Gary, when you think about systems thinking and the nature of change and the 95-5 rule, that if you want to change the behavior of any large group of people, you have to change the system within which they work in. So to that end, Jackie, Skills Ohio, we talked a little bit about your critical thinking to change the conversation in education through experience, competition, and practical education. So how do you see change evolving in the way that you approach it through Skills Ohio?
So I'm a product of the program. I'm a career technical grad myself with a master's degree that I owe no debt. I put myself through earning that master's degree with the education I received in career and technical education. So I get a chance to speak on both sides of that fence now. And what I have seen over 20 some years is that there has been a big change. The big benefit to career and technical education is it's a strategic conversation at this point. Students are choosing to go down that pathway just like they are going to college or going to any other area that they're aiming for. But that's a strategic conversation that we're looking like to folks like yourselves to have that conversation, because students need to hear the benefit. For so long, we've said that trades were stigmatized. They still are. When you look at the traditional education model, they are still very much stigmatized. So what we strive to do is provide opportunities through competition, because that is where there's the most forward-facing side of this conversation. So we bring in 6,000 students to the city of Columbus in May for them to showcase all of these skills. And these students are the best of the best. But throughout the year, we are advocating, much like all of these folks, we are advocating of how important it is for industry to get in front of these students and understand that you all are the face of changing that conversation. If you want to see the shift that Gary was just talking about, you have to have a seat at the table. You have to be a part of the conversation. It's a big lift, but one that's not unachievable if we get in front of it now. So we strive to provide those opportunities through you. And then we also work with companies to have them understand what it looks like to employ Generation Z and millennials, because it is a different conversation. They have different expectations. You heard that this morning and some of the things that were brought up in great questions as we went through this morning's conversations. So we all just need to really get on the same page and understand that this is a strategic change. If we want to see it, you can't sit back on your laurels and say, I'm going to let it be somebody else's problem. So we really bring that attention for those students to feel like they have a place, and that being a skilled trades worker has just as much prestige as earning a college degree.
That's excellent. So we have systematic change and the strategic nature of it. Now, moving on to Gary. Gary, you have a very different perspective. You are a capitalist and you invest in the space based on some original research that you've done. So money talks. So tell us why this disruption is valuable.
So this disruption is valuable for a couple of reasons. First of all, everything that people have said today about the changes in education, the changes in work, these are all fantastic and necessary changes. Just take a moment and realize we've got $1.7 trillion of student debt in this country. And that's fine if that enables those students to leave school and get a good job, get paid well, earn a great return on investment, Too often people are leaving school with 6 figures of debt and they have basically a degree that will enable them to be a barista. And there's nothing wrong with being a barista, but you shouldn't take 4 years and $100,000 to do that. And so what we need to have is a better match. And we've taken a look at the whole sector. Right now, our favorite name in the sector is Coursera, which is a name that many of you have heard of. Coursera has 90 million registered learners. So there were people talking, Dr. Yardini was talking earlier about the history of technology. Let's think back to the early internet boom and realize the huge benefits available to the first people in a business to get scale. That's what Coursera has done. The 2U at X combination, which is an acquisition that we really like, they'll be around 40 to 50 million. So Coursera is already more than double, about double where they are. The stock trades at about 8 times revenue when many other high growth companies are trading at 20 times revenue. And where we differ from kind of the rest of the world on this is the bear case on Coursera is to say, okay, well, COVID was really a one-time event. And to a certain extent, yeah, they're not going to see 60%, 70% revenue growth in perpetuity. Is that a one-time event? Not really, because what Coursera says is that they see themselves growing the top line 30% a year over the next 5-10 years. That is completely believable. Almost everybody in this room was in a position where you graduated from high school, you went to college, you spent 4 years on a college campus, graduated with a degree. Now there are people here who are exceptions, but that's the route most of us took. But now take a minute, let's think about all the people who delayed their education by a year or more, people caring for aging parents, people caring for children, people who have to work their way through school. The traditional education model is fantastic for a lot of us, but it doesn't work for everyone. Coursera is better positioned with more size, more scale to help more people get degrees than they were going to be able to otherwise. There's also an international component. Let's take a moment and think about all the poor people in Brazil, India, China, all over the world who may have a culture that values education and who want very much to get a good career, to get a good job, but they don't have the money or the resources to come to the US to deal with immigration, to deal with the expense of, it could be $250,000 to attend a US university from out of the country. All of a sudden, for a few $1,000s in a few years, they can put themselves in a position to get a great job. Coursera is enabling that. And if they do grow that top line 30% a year, what you're looking at is a place where you can make a multiple of your money over the next 5-10 years. And that's what we're excited about.
Well, that's great news because I have a 13-year-old and an anemic 529. So that's wonderful news for me. John, moving over to you, you have a different angle on this, which I find so fascinating. And you are looking at this more from the trade side. Now, I grew up in the west of Ireland, and that there, being an electrician or a plumber, it was an esteemed career and a good job to have for life. How have the trades fallen out of favor, and what do we have to do to reimagine it?
I think that's a really complicated question. If you really, I mean, there's so many factors, but I think, and particularly plumbing and drain cleaning, like a little word association, what's the first thing that comes to your mind when you think of a plumber, right? It's either butt crack or filth or, it's poop, it's toilets, it's gross, right? But I think the smartest thing, my dad bought the company in 1986 and couldn't turn a wrench if you showed him a YouTube video. But one thing he was good at is redefining how we treat these people, right? Because when you really think about it, what are they responsible for? It's the health of the nation, right? It's all of our most important infrastructure. If water's not coming to your house and waste isn't leaving your house, we're doomed as a society. And so imagine, it's Thanksgiving night, the toilet's overflowing, your mother-in-law's in town. We're the only people who can come and help you, right? And so in this, you're not less than, right? Just because you didn't go to college, you're a hero in these people's eyes. And so that's the biggest challenge we've had, is recasting that, right? And it really comes down to culture. It's how we treat our people and how we, I hate to use the word indoctrinate, but it's essentially what it is, right? Piggybacking off of that, it's really hard to find any sort of training. I think in a lot of ways, there's been this kind of college fallacy perpetuated where, you know, you graduate high school, you go to college for 4 years, you get a great job. In 20 years, you're a vice president of some division, and then your kids go out and they become the CEO of the company after that process continues, right? And just like you said earlier, you come out of college, say you have $35,000 of debt, you're going to get a job at Huntington for 40 grand, and not everybody can rise to the top, right? It's just math. Whereas if you enter our apprenticeship program, you're going to start at 15 bucks an hour while you learn a trade. In 18 months to 2 years, you're in your own truck making $60,000 a year. We have plumbers that make well over $120,000 a year. It's a commission-based model. And so they're great opportunities. We weren't getting any real support in training. So we had to go out 10 years ago and start our own apprenticeship program. I mean, at this point, we've put 45 people through. Of those 45, 20 are still with us. And you do have the problem where a lot of times people will leave, right? Once you've been in the business for 10 years or so, you can accumulate the tools, you can buy a truck, you can start your own business. And as painful as that is, because, you know, that's 250,000 less in revenue for us, we've also created an entrepreneur, somebody who can make their own hours, somebody who can grow their own business, right? Because that's where everything starts. And so as painful it is on one side, it's amazing on another, because you helped, that's how you build an economy, right? So I tend to ramble.
No, it's good. It's gold. It's gold. Honestly, I really think there is a major re-imaging of the trades and apprenticeships that must happen. It just seems like such low-hanging fruit for stable careers for so many. And I wonder what it takes for us to make that leap.
Yeah, half of our entire marketing budget next year is going to recruiting. We could use another 10 trucks in Columbus today, but those people don't exist. And so we're having to create them ourselves. And it's a real challenge.
Do you foresee a future where we could embed or use technology to expand the reach of the trades?
I would love to. It's also an industry, particularly my industry, so it's all mostly home services. There hasn't been an improvement in technology since Roto-Rooter invented the snake in 1925. It's the same stuff. It's the same technology. You use PEC instead of cast iron, or you have a Nest thermostat instead of an old school one where you had to adjust it. But I mean, there's been zero enhancement. There's been zero, like, I guess, investment. No water monitoring, no air monitoring. And then trying to sell it to people because people don't really care. So it's really reframing the entire conversation.
Okay, I think it's given us all here in this room some good ideas. Christy Klaus, moving on to you with Jobs Ohio. Christy, I know you do a lot of good work in this space, and just picking up on the conversation from earlier, but we could have all the skills in the world that we need. But if we don't rethink or strengthen the employer-employee relationship or how they find each other, then how do we actually move forward? So how do you approach that in your line of work?
This is a hard act to follow. So yes, so at Jobs Ohio, we work with companies. Obviously, that's our prime business. And so when we're working with them, we're trying to sometimes drive that mindset, get them to the table, do those kinds of things that we need them to do in order to help themselves help the talent pool. So when we're working with a company, what we did in 2017, so if you didn't catch JP's discussion today, Jobs Ohio is a unique animal built 10 years ago. We've continued to evolve and meet where the market is. And we're able to do that because we're a private organization that is sustainably funded through the liquor enterprise. So if you do partake tonight, no beer, no wine, go with the liquor, because you'll help economic development in the state of Ohio. So with that, we have been able to be very nimble and agile as economies have changed, things have changed. We saw a talent gap and a skill gap back in 2017. It wasn't hitting us as hard as obviously the pandemic then brought automation, digitization at the forefront. And how are we going to help our companies really push forward? So we built an incentive that truly helps them through from A to Z, from a recruiting brand, helping them dig into K through 12, really help them in emerging pipeline, help them get exposure down into career pathways earlier in K through 12 through technical schools and 4-year programs, help attract talent from outside Ohio, helping sell Ohio as a location to come here. And then everything in between, from helping push those companies to think differently about diversity, equity, belonging. How do we help them address some of the underserved or unemployed individuals or underemployed individuals to come up and reskill or get upskilling within their own corporation? So one example in particular is a trucking company down in the Cincinnati who started a couple years ago. And they are well beyond a trucking company. They see themselves as an AI company with predictive analytics. And that is a bulk of their employment is really based off of a tech division within themselves. And they are taking their employees and helping them upskill their employees into C++ and some other very specific things that they need. And Jobs Ohio came in to help them grow here through a talent incentive that we created, again, back in 2017. We're helping match them with max technical training, but max technical training to help them with the training that they need in order to be able to upskill those individuals. And then they bring in entry level and continue to fill their pipeline. So those are the kinds of things we're trying to do with companies to truly think more holistic and to push them into upskilling, reskilling, and seeing an emerging pipeline a little differently than maybe they have so far. Most of them recognize they need to. They just kind of sometimes sit there thinking, I don't know where to start, and I don't even know who to call. Ohio has a big workforce ecosystem, and sometimes just helping navigate that for them is one of our roles.
So it's a two-sided equation on the idea of having to upskill. It's being able to provide those skills, but I think it's also the workforce being able to see themselves in that change and present themselves in a way that they can upskill. So it has to be a meeting in the middle.
Yeah, I kind of see it as three-piece formula. It's the people, the individuals that may be students, that may be a current worker. It may be somebody on the sidelines, as well as then the company and then the service provider. But I think from a Jobs Ohio perspective, we typically come through the employer lens and try to look at the system through that lens so that we can kind of stay focused.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. So Christy, with Dublin City Schools, as an educator, as an administrator, the way you've described it, I was really taken back by the fact of the way you described how you're able to innovate within an existing system. Because systems exist because they perform functions and change is hard. And I was really taken with the way you described your evolution, your ability to institute change. Can you help us understand a little bit about how you approach that change and what are those success factors?
Absolutely. So Dublin City Schools, I should back up, about 16,000 students, very diverse community, wealthy suburb. We have families from over 100 countries, 70 languages. Second most spoken language is Arabic, actually. So very diverse, wonderful learning community. We're traditional. We have been traditional, and we're traditionally successful with our rates of students going to college. And one thing in the state of Ohio, all schools are required, public schools are required to have a business advisory council, which was a wonderful thing for Dublin City Schools because our business advisory council urged us to think differently. When we were considering about 6 years ago building a fourth high school as we grow so rapidly and the need emerged, our BAC said, hold on, we've got to do something differently. We are not seeing graduates that have the skill sets that we need. What can we do? And so instead of building a fourth high school that would cost $120 million roughly, they said, build something else that'll serve students. Some of your students will go there, so enrollment will come off of those 3 big high schools that are so full, and offer them different opportunities to develop the skills we need them to have. So we did it, and we opened a new kind of learning facility called Emerald Campus. And we now have about 1,500 students in that facility, and it serves kids differently. That disruption, that ability to not just build another fourth high school that has a football field and has football teams and has AP stats and government and all the same traditional courses, we were able to pivot and be a little more agile than K-12 education often is. A lot of school districts around have asked us, how do we do that? And have tried to replicate it because we offer career pathways. We actually have sort of a halo effect. When we talk about career technical education and the stigma associated with it, a lot of our families only see college as the option. There is no other option. Career tech is seen as less than, unfortunately. Whereas there are many paths to success. Success is not limited to one profession. We all know that, but helping families to understand, they'll say, well, that's fine for other children. I support it for other children, but not for my child. My child's going to be a doctor, a lawyer, an engineer. Those are the top three we hear. And we say, wow, there's so many options, and we want to really have your child see all of their potential. There are issues with equity, wanting to make sure all students can see their potential in many roles. So Emerald Campus was a facility we opened in 2018. And as I mentioned, about 1,500 students are served in that building from our 3 high schools. They choose to attend for part or all of their day. And we have things like career academies, so engineering and IT academy. We have a cyber academy, business academy, internship programs, things for experiential hands-on learning, where students also get either credentials or college credits, and they can explore and visit companies and learn from professionals in the field. We found that one of the best ways to help our families to see about these opportunities is to hear from industry. As educators, I can talk till I'm blue in the face about all the great opportunities in different areas of the economy, but families need to hear it from industry, specifically the field that their child might be interested in. Students are easy. They're easy to convince. They're open to these kinds of opportunities. But families and even educators on our staff, our counselors, it's difficult for them to see a future for their students that's different than what they experienced. So by opening a new facility, we were able to bring together the most forward-thinking teachers of these programs and continue to add programming. We just added an aviation academy this year with Ohio State University to be able to pivot more quickly than changing an entire set of comprehensive high schools. So that's one way that we've been able to sort of flip the script and disrupt ourselves in how we provide learning opportunities for school students.
I think it's an extraordinary use case to describe. We've talked already about the larger system that we have to move towards and the platforms that already exist to do that. So we have the technology and the need to fill, but it does strike me that it is almost like the parental use case that has to get over. Is that a gating factor? So would you identify that as one of the larger gating factors in your world in terms of moving on towards progress and skills?
Absolutely. I'm in the business of education and educating our families. And, many of you have children, I'm sure, or grandchildren, and people that you're wanting to help have the right skill set and be successful. All of our families want their students to be independent and have the skills they need, but they're not necessarily sure how that looks. So we now know people need technical skills. They need the hard skills and the soft skills. And a lot of our teachers are also parents, and they know that, but there's a gap in their skill set. So providing that kind of learning and education to all the adults is really the challenge. Teachers have a certain skill set in a content area, but they don't necessarily have the newest skill set. Our teachers who teach technology might not know AI, blockchain, and Internet of Things, those sorts of things. Our families might be aware, but it's hard for them to understand all the options for their kids when they don't know all those options. They might know their field, but not everyone's.
Because it's not the way they grew up or they were taught. So it's hard to bridge that gap. One last question on skills. The World Economic Forum for years has been proclaiming the top 10 skills. The top 3 to 5 are all about those human nature skills of critical thinking, creativity, problem solving. Are those skills that you're able to weave into your curriculum? Do you address that specifically?
I was just in a meeting right before I came here about that with our curriculum director, emphasizing how these can't be skills in an after-school program. They have to be embedded in all of their experiences K-12. You don't start teaching those skills in high school. It's something that is critical in elementary school to have the foundational skills that are learned and practiced at an appropriate level and built upon and woven into all of the learning experiences that a child has. It's not a nice to have. It's not an add-on. We're not going to have a soft skills course, although we're supplementing it this time in that way because helping all of our educators know how to teach those things is messy. It's different than the math teacher teaching algebra and equations. How do they integrate it into the learning is challenging. And knowing how to measure that, our effectiveness of teaching those skills is even more challenging. We have some things we've started just this year, a middle school program, an advisory type thing with social emotional learning and career education. And that's something that's new, but it's a Band-Aid. It's something that will hopefully fill that gap for now, but until we can integrate through all of our courses and all grade levels.
Absolutely. So it has to be in the DNA of what you do.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've covered a lot in terms of access to skills, but what about groups of people that don't traditionally have access to skills at all? So, Jerry, I know that you're with Oakmont Education. I'd love to understand your perspective to how do we think about in the future connecting disadvantaged groups to skills access?
Sure. It was kind of funny when you were talking about that's what somebody else's baby can do, but not mine. I reckon I got all those babies. So for us, you got to think of this. Research suggests that 81% of young people who drop out of high school drop out because of their perceived lack of relevance between what they're learning and what they need as an adult. That's why you bring in career tech. For us, we've looked at labor market data across Ohio, and we've come up with the core four that we work with: construction, advanced manufacturing, healthcare, and business and entrepreneurial. The key for us is it's got to start with learning how to work. So we only do industry credentialing, but equal to that task is teaching young people the skills that employers are looking for. Early is on time is late. Young people just don't know how to work right now, and we need to teach them to do that. And the other way that we teach them how to work is by putting them in internships, working with not-for-profits, because we have to change their paradigm about work. It's not about what I'm going to get, it's about what I'm going to give. So if I can help somebody who, like a not-for-profit, if I can help them out. In Dayton, we build homes as part of the city's revitalization effort. Some of the homes that we have built have been for disabled, homeless veterans. There's really nothing more powerful than actually building a home, new construction, stick building up, and then meeting the family that you've built that home for and understanding what a difference it's made. You look at our youth, for so many of them, they have been disconnected from academic success and social success. But now you put them in front of a 3D printer, or you put them in a house, or you have them doing healthcare screenings or volunteering in a hospital and a nursing home. And now they say, I did that. I'm successful. The biggest part of this, and I don't know if you want me to go into the sector strategy approach now,
I definitely do.
but I think it's silly for us as educators to think of, we know how to train these young people for business. So we take the Business Advisory Council a little further in what the Department of Labor calls sector strategy approach. We bring in employers, and I mean the big hitters, the ones that are ready to hire a lot of our graduates. And we put them at a table and we meet quarterly and we offer up our curriculum and we say, what do we need to do better? Like, we're making the soup, but they're the executive chef. Tell us, more salt, more pepper. How do you want us to create entry-level workers for you? And it's amazing how the businesses will respond. They'll help guide us. But then I turn around and I say, now y'all need to put some skin in the game, because this isn't about just what we're doing on the school side. Now I need businesses to step up and offer internships and volunteer experiences. But here's the great part. Y'all get to vet them. You get to see the young people that work hard during their senior year. You get to challenge them on increased skills. At the end, when they graduate, hopefully together, we have made an entry-level employee in the image that you want to see them. You don't have to worry about going to a temp firm and hiring somebody for 90 days, only to find out that if you really like them, you got to pay some huge fee to keep them on. You don't have to spend a dime on our youth, just the time and the application of doing a job. And then when they walk across the stage, they have a job that pays a sustainable living wage. What we do with our employers, though, is to also ask them, if you've been all year working with them and you know them and you vetted them and then you're comfortable, if you hire somebody off the street at 15 an hour, why don't you hire that youth at 17 an hour? Just that difference will make a huge impact on the lives of our young people, but you've already gotten somebody who you've vetted, who has done the job in your facility, your way, your training. No need to worry about onboarding anymore. It's been highly successful. As I said in the beginning, we put out over 1,300 graduates in placement. And by the way, we do track their placement. We follow them for a year so that if they have hiccups in life, like transportation, childcare, food insecurity, we are there to help them. It really, in the research, is pretty strong about the first year after high school, whether it be college or a job. That first year of completion is the most important to the trajectory of success, staying onward and upward.
All right, so we've covered a lot of really good, valuable points today that I think we're coming to the conclusion is that it takes a lot more public-private partnership, a lot more innovation, a lot more rethinking, reimagining, not just of the tools, but of the relationships that exist within education to solve for the impending and massive disconnect that is occurring. So with that and the comments by the panelists, I'd love to open up for any questions from anybody on the floor.
Thank you. I guess I want to go back to Simon's opening statement about motivation. How about, how are all of you working on the self-motivation or instilling that, as we heard earlier, you can't wait to bring them all the way up through. It's great that we have the systems for that, but how do we have more motivated people now when attention spans are low? Everyone's gaming. We're entertained a lot, the bread and games, I guess, that Simon referred to. When we think about how many major universities, Ivy League schools, they have all of their courses online. They're free. You just can't get the degree that way. The patent system in the US, every single invention, it's a solution to a problem. If you can read, you can teach yourself anything. But we don't really have the attention spans perhaps to do that. Or is it the motivation? How are you instilling this motivation, the self-advocacy, so that people are proactive to get what's already there?
Well, we've already solved one of your problems because I know Gary's research has shown that you can get an Ivy League degree online, hence an opportunity for change. But Simon, did you want to address the self-motivation?
Self-motivation is a very specific thing when you're managing a company rather than just making speeches. And I will just give you a few ideas what it does to people who are self-motivated. Maybe somebody who does education. My mom was an educator. She received the award from U.S. Congress. So I greatly respect this field, greatly respect, but they know better. So when you have motivation, self-motivation as opposed to just motivation from outside, number one, you take critique as critique and you grow, as opposed to you take an offense because somebody doesn't like what you did. This is a huge thing. You grow your flexible mindset or fixed mindset, as we know, right? Self-motivation makes you flexible mindset. It helps you to grow. It helps you to overcome problems. The second thing is education. You can help people, as Jen, you just mentioned, everything they have at the workplace, all types of education. But unless they're motivated, they will always complain that there is not enough information. They always complain that you didn't do something for them to get educated. Those who act, who are self-motivated, take something up from the air, they learn, and they go ahead. And it changes completely the risk culture of organization of the society, because self-motivated people understand that they have to do something, and those who are kind of accustomed to being managed and be told and somebody takes care of them, these people actually always complain that there is a lack of leadership, nobody created an environment for them, there is a lot of bureaucracy, and that's not America, and that's not what we expect from people, and that's the people, this is the category of people who end up playing games because they will feel that they're alienated from the society, they're not given by the society. Thank you.
This is probably just me as someone who's maybe a little younger, is I think every generation has looked at the next generation since the beginning of time as you have it easier than me, you're lazy, you're unmotivated. And I think it's incumbent on us to motivate them, right? Like, I have 3 young daughters. The way I communicate with them is vastly different than the way my father communicates with me, which is vastly different than the way his father communicated with him, right? And so I think it's incumbent upon us, like if we want people who are motivated, well, shit, that's my job, is to motivate you guys and to attract you. And it may mean I have to change some of the way I look at things because it is a different generation. Like I'm probably the last generation that didn't grow up with the internet, right? It was really popular and like started in middle school, but I didn't get a cell phone until junior year of high school, right? So it's the last one on that cusp. And I really think, it's pie in the sky and it's, these kids don't want to work. The government's giving them money. As soon as we stop giving them money, they'll come back to work. And maybe what we really need to do is say, what we were doing 20 years ago, 10 years ago, isn't working anymore. Like I know our recruitment, we have to completely redo all of our recruiting ads. Indeed doesn't work anymore, right? It's about culture. They want to feel a little bit more, touchy-feely, or it's other things that are important to them. They want to be able to leave work early because they stayed late the night before. And as the guy who's running the business, that's my job, right? It's my job to make sure that you feel happy, you're coming in, it's the best possible place to work. And it's a hell of a challenge. But I hear that so much, and I'm not saying it's wrong. It's just, those are my 2 cents. Yeah.
But that, right, and so it's back to the change of conversation that we were talking about earlier. I don't call it self-motivation, I call it empowerment, because as soon as you put that power terminology behind it, I don't care whether you're talking to an elementary school student, or you're talking to a high schooler, or you're talking to a college educated person. Once you put that terminology behind it, you just change the conversation. So when we talk about self-motivation, all of our focus is on empowering students to do something that they wouldn't have had a chance to do otherwise. It's changing that conversation to make it their own versus something that I told them they had to do. As soon as we get away from that, you now see those graduation rates increase, you see the completers increase, just like Dublin City Schools. That model is incredibly impactful, and there are several school districts that are doing things like that across the state. But that's the change in conversation that has to happen with parents. It is the parents, just like you, it is the parents that have to have that conversation. And unfortunately, what we're seeing more and more is that the parents aren't having a seat at the table. Now you have a young person that is left alone to try to figure this out as they move forward. So that's where organizations like ours and folks like you need to come to this table and have this conversation. This is the importance of changing the way that we do business. That's the only way we're going to fix this. Because I agree with Jobs Ohio, this isn't going to be solved by high school juniors and seniors and a 4-year college degree. This is a cultural change. And until we see it as that, we're not going to see that shift. And as somebody who's walked the walk and now talks the talk, it is different to see what motivates people, what in the trades. Every trade is different. I have a unique perspective as I serve all 16 pathways. So every career field I have to serve. It's a different conversation. But what is coming back as the common theme is exactly that it's empowerment. It is what makes you tick. What do you need as a company so that I can go back and educate these students as to how to have that conversation? So it's an empowerment piece.
Absolutely agree. And I love how you said empowerment, and how we re-engage students in curiosity and taking ownership of their learning just looks different than when we were all in those classrooms. So our teachers have to change how they teach. We can't make someone motivated just like we can't make someone happy. It's in the same category. It's really about how do we allow them to have relevant learning experiences that connect to their futures, and how we get them to solve real problems and not just fill out worksheets. This generation, Gen Z and the alphas and betas that are coming up next, they don't want to do that. They can look it up, just like you said. They can Google it. They don't need someone to tell them. They need someone to help them find the right problems to solve and give them support and tools to do so. And that's what the workforce also needs. So if we can, as an educational institution, put in place those skills we want students to have and how we teach them, if we can shift our adult practices to align with how they need to learn for the skills that they need to develop, then we have an equation that will work.
Well, Christy, I think you might have just blown people's minds between alpha and beta, describing the younger generation that those are terms. Super quick, because we can take one question from the back, and Mark's giving me dirty
Sure.
looks.
There's just a thing called unconscious ignorance, so people don't know what they don't know. You know, we're talking for our youth that really don't have a lot of influence. You got to teach them. It's just as important to teach them how to be safe with a power tool as it is to tell them and work with companies about baby boomers. See, a baby boomer will tell you to do something. They expect when you're done, you're going to come back. Not these babies. These babies, you tell them to do one thing, they do one thing and they stop. You want them to do two things, like come back to you, you got to teach them that. So we have this gap right now where we expect young people to do things that are not technical and yet they've never been taught. Fix that. You'll fix a lot of the labor supply. Again, I'm talking entry-level labor supply. And those people can then prove themselves in your companies to move up.
And that is a wrap. Thank you for your attention, and thanks to all the panelists for all your thoughts.
And please, I want to make sure we're thanking Denise for herding the cats on this panel. So Denise, thank you for all your work in putting this together.
Come join our 361 firm community of investors and thought leaders. We have a lot of events created by the community as we collaborate on investments and philanthropic interests. Join us.